Good afternoon. I'm Phoebe Connolly, the Deputy Director of Video at the Washington Post. We are a charter sponsor of the National Book Festival. I'd like to start by thanking the co-chairman of the festival, David Rubenstein, and the other generous sponsors who have made this event possible. If you'd like to add your financial support, please note the information is in your program. We will have time after the presentation for questions, and I've been asked to remind you that if you come to the microphone, you will be included in videotape of the event, which may be broadcast at a later time. So without further ado, our guests today are Matt de la Peña and Loren Long. They are the author and illustrator of this book, Love, which they will be talking about today. Matt de la Peña is the #1 New York Times best-selling, Newbery Medal-winning author of 5 picture books, including The Last Stop on Market Street, and his new one, which is coming out shortly, called Carmela Full of Wishes, as well as 6 critically acclaimed young adult novels. He received his M.F.A. in creative writing from San Diego State University, and he attended school on a full athletic scholarship for basketball, which I think is a pretty cool fact. Loren Long is the award-winning #1 New York Times best-selling children's book author and illustrator. He is the creator of the Otis series of picture books, as well as Little Tree, and the upcoming There's a Hole in the Log at the Bottom of the Lake. You might also know his drawings because he's the illustrator of Thee I Sing by Barack Obama. Before they get them started, they will be signing books at 2 p.m. So please welcome Matt de la Peña and Loren Long.
Thank you. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for having us here. The last time I was here, and I think Loren too, it was on the lawn.
Yeah, it was outside.
This is the first time we've done it inside. Yeah. This is exciting. We're going to begin by just reading the book to you. Ready? You might notice Loren over here drawing. He seems to draw everywhere we go. So, love. In the beginning, there is light, and 2 wide-eyed figures standing near the foot of your bed, and the sound of their voices is love. A cab driver plays love softly on his radio while you bounce in back with the bumps of the city, and everything smells new, and it smells like life. Love, too, is the smell of crashing waves and a train whistling blindly in the distance. And each night, the sky above your trailer turns the color of love. In a crowded concrete park, you toddle toward summer sprinklers while older kids skip rope and run up the slide, and soon you are running among them, and the echo of your laughter is love. On the night the fire alarm blares, you're pulled from sleep and whisked into the street, where a quiet old lady is pointing to the sky. Stars shine long after they've flamed out, she tells you, and the shine they shine with is love. But it's not only stars that flame out, you discover. It's summers, too, and friendships, and people. One day, you find your family nervously huddled around the TV, but when you ask what happened, they answer with silence and shift between you and the screen. In your dream that night, you are searching for a love that seems lost. You open and close drawers, lift cushions, empty old toy bins, but there's nothing. You wake with a start in the arms of a loved one who bends to your ear and whispers, "It's okay, it's okay, it's love." And in time, You learn to recognize a love overlooked, a love that wakes at dawn and rides to work on the bus, a slice of burned toast that tastes like love. And it's love in each deep crease of your grandfather's face as he lowers himself onto an overturned bucket to fish. And it's love in the rustling leaves of gnarled trees lined behind the flower fields. And it's love in the made-up stories your uncles tell in the backyard between wild horseshoe throws. And the man in rags outside the subway station plays love notes that lift into the sky like tiny beacons of light. And the face staring back in the bathroom mirror, this too is love. So when the time comes for you to set off on your own, heavy winds will sweep past your building and great gray clouds will congregate above. Your loved ones will stand there like puddles beneath their umbrellas, holding you tight and kissing you and wishing you luck. But it won't be luck you'll leave with, because you'll have love. You'll have love, love, love. Thank you for letting me read that to you. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just briefly talk about where we come from and how we both arrived at this same book. Loren lives in Cincinnati, Ohio. I live in Brooklyn, New York. So we're coming at it from different places, different upbringings, and we wanted to find the most inclusive word we could render in a book, and for us it was love. So a little bit about me first. This is my dad. He was just a kid when I was born. He was the first in his family to be born in America. We call him the Mexican hippie surfer, because he's Mexican, but he likes to surf, which is not normal. And that's me, the big boy right there that likes tacos. So my dad's Mexican, my mom is white. Now this isn't the greatest picture of me. By the way, I thought that there was an undiagnosed medical condition happening here until I just had a son a few months ago, and he's even fatter than me. So it's just purely genetic. But here's my mom. And they were both teenagers when I was born, and we grew up right on the Mexican border. And I did play basketball in college. I became the first in my family to go to college thanks to a sport. That's why all you young guys, if you love sports, it could take you places that you never imagined. I'm just going to flash through a couple of my previous books. Last Up on Market Street. Oh, that's nice. And where did I come out on landing on love? I just remember there was so much divisiveness in the country, when I started to write the book, and I had a daughter at the time, only a daughter. And I remember thinking, what is the one thing that we all share, no matter what our political beliefs, no matter what our social standing in the country is? And I felt like it's love. It's the kid growing up in Brooklyn has love, hopefully. The kid growing up in rural Pennsylvania has love in their family. So that's where I landed with this book. And I was very fortunate enough to be able to share this experience with Loren Long. And now he's going to tell you a little bit about his background.
Right. So Matt de la Peña grew up near the ocean, in San Diego, near the Mexican border, in an exotic place where people surf. I came from an exotic land called Missouri. That's my childhood. So it was one of the best things about doing a book and actually collaborating with the author is getting to know him. I really learned a lot about his culture by sharing my culture. You can see what I look like. There's my dad and my mom. Nobody in my family were artists, They liked So this is Missouri. Then we moved to Kentucky. This is when you're an 11-year-old kid on your birthday, your mom might put a horse when you live in Lexington, Kentucky. We didn't wear shirts or shoes. No Kentucky jokes. Now I live in Ohio, but it was really wonderful for me to grow up in this environment. A couple of teachers. We have educators in the room by show of hands? Yes. Yes. A couple of special teachers. By this time, mom and dad, salesperson, secretary, no artists. We didn't go to art museums. We didn't do those things. The only time I went to an art museum is when we visited my grandmother in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we went to this, I used to call it the Cowboy Museum. It was the Gilcrease Hills Museum. Tulsa, Oklahoma was filled with Frederick Remington paintings. I wasn't an artist, but I loved to draw. And I had a couple of special teachers. This is my middle school, my 7th grade influential human being in my life. And I'll go ahead and straight up just tell you, it was a mostly white school that I went to. 7th grade, this man was the head football coach. He was the coolest guy in the building. He would never know Shrimpy Loren, who was the furthest thing from a football coach, except he was also the art teacher. I heard him say my name once. And I looked up and I said, I can't believe Mr. Pennington uttered my name. And he was holding my drawing. And I'll never forget the sound of hearing Mr. Pennington use my name. And it's just an amazing thing. That was love. He didn't have to help me out, but he started giving me a little extra attention. By the way, I was never the best artist in my class. There was always some annoying kids that were better than me. But I really loved it. I really loved it. Then I had another teacher, Miss Clifton. I'll never forget Miss Clifton till the day I die. By the way, that's me with all that hair. That's me as a freshman or a 10th grader. She's teaching me how to use oil paints. She was bringing her art books from home. Loren, this is Vincent van Gogh. Have you ever heard of him? Loren, have you ever heard of Norman Rockwell? You know. So it was very influential. I've come all these years to realize that was absolutely an act of love on her part. Here's some of my books. One of the biggest joys of my career is re-illustrating a new version of The Little Engine That Could, one of my favorite songs when I was little. We'll go through these quick.
Otis.
Otis the Tractor was the first thing I ever wrote. I never thought I would write something. I wasn't a great reader when I was little. It was an attention thing. It was easier for me to draw pictures and play and goof around than it was to focus on reading. So as a result, I never thought I would grow up and be a writer. And I wrote my own story about a little tractor. And we have 6 hardcovers, by the way. They make great gifts. Yeah, the kid from Lexington, Kentucky gets this phone call. President Obama, yes. I'm living in Cincinnati, Ohio, and somebody from New York calls me because the president and his family chose me to illustrate his amazing love letter to his daughters of thee I sing, a letter to my daughters. Definitely check that one out. And Little Tree, when my sons, who I feel like are your age, went to college, I was having a hard time with it. My wife wasn't even having as hard a time as I was. For some reason, it was hard for me to let go, and I wrote a little fable, and who knows that I could write something, but it actually gave me comfort. And I thought if it comforted me, maybe it would comfort somebody else. So Little Tree, and then, I think we're on Love, right?
Yeah, we're on
And then Love. And then I get this. This is called a manuscript. So Matt De La Peña lives in Brooklyn, New York. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had been fortunate enough to meet Matt. I knew about his career. I knew of his Newbery Medal career. And I get in my phone call from my agent a text called Love from Matt De La Peña. I read this and I'm thinking, I'm in. I want to give love to the world. And then I read it. And Matt's text went into some different places. I'll never forget the first time I read this piece right here, and I read, "The sky above your trailer turns the color of love." And I actually said, "Did he say trailer?" And I'm like, this goes into different areas. This book allowed me to take my art, my Otis the Tractor and Little Engine That Could career, into a little different area, and I'll always be grateful for that, Matt. In Matt's text, he talks about how beautiful love is, how you receive it, how you start to recognize it. It's also a little messy in places, right? Love isn't always perfect. And I said, you know, I've been painting the same way my entire career for 15 books. It's time for me to do something a little different. So has anybody ever heard of monoprints, monotypes? What I did with love, it's unpredictable. I have a way of painting my art into oblivion. People have to tell me to stop, you know? Nobody ever has to say, Loren, paint more. They always have to say, stop, right? Art directors, editors, because I'm like a working artist. I am going to work on this painting until I prove this thing is good to the world every time. Even after I've illustrated Barack Obama's book, I'm still having to prove myself. Anyway, I sometimes get a little too detailed, so I decided to do monotype prints. So I'm looking at, okay, so first I'm looking at the manuscript. There's no book, right? It's just paper, and this is what I'm looking at. And I'm pretending I'm a movie director. And this is the part where it says, Matt, can you read that for me?
Sure, so it's, and in time you learn to recognize a love overlooked, a love that wakes at dawn and rides to work on the bus. And originally, the line after that read, a pair of old house slippers that fit like love. And I was thinking of my grandmother. So you get this text.
Yeah, so if you all got that text, what would you draw? That's what I'm asking myself. I feel like I'm 5 years old again drawing Snoopy on the kitchen floor. There's no difference. So I decide I'm going to make a moment in this little movie, and I'm going to show the child from behind, and he's watching his parent. That bus represents his parent, and I thought, how clever am I? I'm going to put oversized slippers, and I'm going to nail this, and the slippers represent the parent. But when I saw the picture, it didn't ring true to me. It almost felt like a desertion, like somebody's being deserted. It was too heavy. It wasn't the right note. It wasn't the right moment in our movie. So I changed it. You can see here, I've changed the socioeconomic of this little boy simply by the props that I put in his room. Now I've got a big picture window, right? I've got a kind of a different types of fancy drapes. I'm still grappling with what kind of underwear this little boy is going to wear.
You went to the tighty-whitey here.
Yeah, this is the tighty-whitey or the blue and gold.
And apparently your wife was not a fan.
No, my wife, by the way, comes into my studio, which is in my home, and she says, I don't like the tighty-whiteys. And I'm saying, this is authentic, man. I said, Tracy, this is art. Yeah. So you can see here, I also put the figure, I put the parent walking to that bus. And then I felt like it wasn't quite right. I remembered my own brother at a time when my two parents left before we did for the school bus. My brother, my oldest brother's responsibility was feeding me, and he would always make toast. And so I brought in another figure. You can see I've made the window smaller. I've changed what kind of subject I'm making just by those little details.
And so this gets kicked over to me, and I think this is an interesting detail not everybody knows. Normally when a picture book is created, the author and the illustrator stay separate. They never discuss any of the process. They only meet when the book is done. But Loren and I had a different situation. We actually talked on the phone multiple times. We talked out everything. And when I got this sketch in the mail, or in my email, I actually thought, whoa, this is a whole nother layer of love that I hadn't originally considered. And for the first time in my career, I changed the text because of a sketch. So I took out the oversized slippers that I thought my grandma I remembered from her closet. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna I'm going to put this toast in. So it changed the line to a slice of burned toast that tastes like love.
And that's my favorite line in the book.
Of course.
It is a good line. It's a great line. That's a great piece of writing.
It was actually cited in a review, and I was like, oh, can I take credit for this?
Oh, yeah, you can. So just real quick, in part because of what I told you about me being a bit of a perfectionist, I wanted to do mono prints. Instead of taking my paint from my palette directly to the illustration board or the canvas, we used a brayer and worked on glass, plexiglass. And for you monotype specialists out here, forgive me, this is the first time I've ever done this. Because I was trying to jump in the dark. I was trying to do something to match the depth of Matt's text. So I would ink up the brayer and I would wipe it onto the plexiglass and smudge it away and pull it away and use paint brushes to add, use Q-tips to pull away and draw and manipulate the ink. Then I would take it down to a studio and then I would take it down to the little makeshift basement printing shop that I set up, and I convinced my wife I should buy a press. Put this on and then took a piece of paper that was damp, put it down, run it through that roller, and it actually mashes the ink onto that paper. You come out and you pull that paper up and it has an impression. And that doesn't look like much, but I thought, okay, those are my figures. That's my figures. But I can't do the background. So I did that on another page. And you can see the one on the right is a real dark background, the wall. And I'm having fun. It's like I could never paint these textures with my hand and paintbrush like I've been doing for 20 years. But I did something called a ghost print. That background's too dark, so I ran that same piece of glass through on a new clean piece of paper, and I got the lighter one. And then, how many of you guys do collage art? I'd never done collage art, but I needed to put these images together. So I cut the window from the right, glued it onto the left, cut the figures out, cut them out, glued them on, and I've got my painting. It doesn't look finished, but I've got the structure of my art. I've got stuff that I'd never done with textures and rawness that I thought sort of matched the text about love in Matt's work. And then here I finished by painting like I always do with paintbrushes and some colored pencils, putting extra attention on the expression, just a little touch in this big brother, his face. But you want to get that emotion right. And then, Matt, you saw this.
Yes,
and this is when you...
This is probably when I actually changed the text. And you might notice that this is pretty well-made toast. And I was like, I don't trust this brother's toast-making skills.
Right.
So I burned it, and now watch the final detail. He burns it.
Yeah, that was an all-nighter to burn that toast.
But you know, we would just like to say it was such an honor to share this book with you at the National Book Festival. So thank you so much for having us. Total honor.
I have one thing to do.
Oh yeah, and then Loren actually has something he's produced here.
So if you're an educator, raise your hand.
See, we have a lot of educators.
Who's in an elementary school? What are you? You're a reading teacher? Okay. What's your name? Christina? Do you have a classroom? Do you have walls? All right. And your name is, how do you spell your name? Okay. I might misspell it, but here we go.
So it's kind of cool because he's given these out everywhere we've presented.
INA, right?
Kind of fun.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm just going to sign this and give it to you.
Thank you.